Hello, I'm Halcylion, or I would have been if that name wasn't already taken. Welcome back to Corporate Reports. We've done a lot of political maneuvering to get to where we are right now, but as I've said in the previous chapter, HalCorp is not yet ready for conflict. I know, my adventure isn't as action-packed as I would have liked, but if the goal is complete world domination, a lot of my time must be spent arranging pieces on a chessboard, unbeknownst to the other players, so that when the hostilities begin, the opposition will have already been forced into a checkmate. With that said, today we'll be expanding the corporation through non-violent means and consolidating power to ensure that our organization doesn't go down in flames the moment someone declares war. The main theme of the previous chapter was the mass production of collector weapons, but two other things have proven to be of greater significance: my ascension to godhood and the recruitment of more clans into our ranks. Lucian, Aaron and Chason have become part of the HalCorp family, and they were given castles to rule in my name. Today we'll mainly be focusing on this aspect of kingdom management as I roam Calradia on a massive recruitment spree, as well as buying enough land for our new employees to rule over. So let's put all these millions of dinars to use. Today I mainly want to recruit two big clans into the organization, but if any other leaders cross my path, they will be offered the opportunity to join me. The two clans I want to hire are the Saranids and the Kerjit, and to do that, I'll need to have a chat with Adram and Mesui respectively. But before I even left Sanala, the nearby Aserai army disbanded and Talas was approachable. I tried getting him to join and we got really close to an understanding, but ultimately, he could not put the good of the realm before his own interests, so he remained a servant of Unkid. He previously sold the city of Kozira to me, thinking he can take it back when his kingdom declares war on mine, but before that was even an option, this town was given to Caladog, so Talas has the entire nation of Botania to contend with if he wants his town back. Speaking of which, that was the first city I passed through, intending to visit the forge and make more money, but after taking a look at my smithing materials I realized I don't have enough. Iron and wood, that's what I need. Iron can be smelted from the weapons sold in town, but wood doesn't grow anywhere in the desert, so I need to return to Botania to resupply. But my visit to this town wasn't entirely useless. I traded some goods, sold all the trash I've looted from battles, and bought some weapons that could be smelted into proper iron. And before I left town in search of a drum, I asked the locals of his whereabouts, and I was told he's nearby, and as I departed, I saw his party roaming the desert. So I gave chase and we met right outside his castle. Before the subject of employment was even brought up, I paid him 3 million dinars for his castle and his town, and then I offered him the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to become part of the organization that will control the world. He had some doubts, but eventually I managed to convince him to join HalCorp, but of course, he wanted some support. So I made him a landowner by selling him the castle I just bought from him. I obviously got less money than I paid for it, but what use is money if it isn't used to consolidate your power? That is a maneuver I'll keep making with all the clan leaders I meet. First of all, because I pay slightly more money than the fiefs are worth, I build some initial trust with the noble I'm dealing with. Then, because he has no fiefs, he has no reason to stay loyal to his current king. When they join the corporation, they would be getting their fiefs back for a profit and manage the land in the name of their new contractor, me. This way, we expand our territory and we get more military power that makes the other kingdoms think twice before declaring war. With the Saranids and their lands under my banner, we're inching closer to my ultimate goal. Step by step, that's how it's done. A few hours after that, I arrived in the city of Iakis, where I've done more transactions. I sold some of my goods, bought some others, but I mostly needed more smithing materials. Since there is no wood available in here, I just bought a large amount of weapons for smelting. I did not know exactly what I was doing, so I decided to experiment by purchasing all the throwing daggers available in town. Maybe some of those can be scrapped into forged iron. But when I went to the forge, I noticed that something was missing. Or rather, someone. There used to be 7 of us working, but now we're only 6, and I don't remember sending anyone anywhere. Morinon the surgeon is not with us, let's see what he's up to. Where he's up to. Heaven. Last seen at Tbilisi Castle 14 days ago, he must have perished during the siege, just as I was undergoing my transformation into the sacred majesty of Calradia. Reputed to be decent and kind, he could save others, but not himself. Rest in peace, brother. Now I need to find a new physician to patch up my men after each battle. We only had two options, a Battanian healer, last spotted in Sanala with a med skill of 80, or an Aserai scholar with a skill of 120. Because I hire based on performance and not ethnicity, we'll take the Aserai doctor, but I have to admit, my companions do not meet their diversity quota. Most of them are Aserai and 2 of them are Kuzeet. It's a bit strange how no Battanian or Imperial Wanderers can even compare to my guys. Not in engineering or tactics or medicine, not even in roguery, but this subject doesn't matter enough to warrant further investigation, so let's leave it at that. We need to find Mesui and add her clan to our ranks. In my journey, I also passed through the markets of Hubiar, made some transactions, bought more weapons to smelt and earned another skill point in trade, something that's a bit rare these days, since I'm not trading like I used to. I still need to develop my skill, but we'll do that as we siege towns when war comes. I also passed through the city of Razi, which was purchased from the Saranids, and it would seem that this town makes quite a decent amount of money. 1.5 thousand per day in tax revenue. Of course, I'm not getting all of it because the garrison stationed here needs to be paid too, and they are quite costly. In fact, I'm not making a penny from the towns I own because my soldiers are extremely expensive. As I obtain more towns and defeat my enemies, I should limit the garrison of each of my fiefs to 100 tier 2 soldiers. Not enough to defend our lands from invaders, but enough to keep the peace in each town and prevent rebellions. And the less money I spend on garrisons, the more I get to pocket myself. Speaking of garrisons, there are several horsemen stationed in here, which I should take to Remtoil Castle when I eventually get back home. For now, I still have a job to do. Finding people to give a job to. All interviews must be conducted in person since we have no human resources department to send mails to each of the clan leaders that I want to invite into my organization. Mails? What are those? I meant ravens. The site must be acting up. Anyway, my mission right now is to talk to a lot of people, and not just those I can recruit into my corp, but also those that can sell me the fiefs I want. Meladir and Prindor are part of the latter group because they have some Battanian castles that I need. So I accessed my encyclopedia and marked each of my targets with a star to make them easier to find. In my search for Mesui, I run into other noblemen, the first of which was Fafen, an ex-Sturgian boyar. As you can expect, the first thing I've done was to buy his castle, after which he was offered the chance to join Halcorp. Despite his initial resistance, he said yes and promptly got his castle back, paying less than half of what he got for it. So from his point of view, that was a very profitable deal. But I got something far more precious than money, another clan into the fold. The reason I give these lords their castles back is to keep them bound to my empire, because as long as they are landowners, they have no reason to defect. But my territory is too spread out at the moment. My main cities are in Battania, but all our new purchases are on the opposite end of the continent, and this is a big problem if we are ever at war, since we cannot defend both locations. As soon as I return home, I will solve this issue. Shortly after meeting Fafen, I ran into an old friend, Tynops, the only lord to ever defeat me in battle. Then again, I haven't fought that many lords. Now, his clan is rather small and I'd be fine if he remained in the service of the Aserai, but let's give him a job and see if he takes it. Needless to say, I first bought his castles for about 700k, and after he joined he got one of them back for 250k, so he made a hefty profit by joining me. Overall, a profitable transaction for me too, since I now had more workforce. But all this running around made me tired, so at some point, I took a break and analyzed my corporation's balance sheet. The Battanians and Kuzeits are making a lot of money from the tribute I'm paying them, but I'm not to worry about that since I can pay the price. It's always wise to keep your enemies complacent until you can deal the killing blow. As for the direction of my kingdom, I spent a large chunk of my own influence to support the other clans who joined and make them feel like they have a say in my decisions. I also enacted several policies that would benefit my vassals more than they do me, but my own power and influence is already secured, so let's make the others think that they matter. Lord's Privy Council would generate more influence for tier 5 clans. Feudal inheritance would make it more difficult for me to revoke their fiefs. Peerage would make their decisions carry more weight compared to mine. And finally, bailiffs would decrease the tax revenue from towns, but increase each clan's influence for every fief they own. Now, this policy was rejected by the council for some reason, but I implemented it nonetheless because I'm the boss. After this, I only had 150 influence left, but I earned 14 every single day, so I'm not to worry about this particular currency. Right after making these changes, I ended up in the city of Phycaon, where I asked about various persons of interest. Hilam the Scholar, my future field medic, was spotted in Onira, which I've just passed, but it's worth going back and picking him up. Before I arrived in town, however, I noticed a little red stain on my map. A party of 56 looters, an excellent training opportunity. Before charging in, I did equip some weapons that would provide me with a better cardio exercise. Mutilator, my lightweight Fox. Decimator, my devastating polearm, and a bag of collector javelins. Once the battle started, I organized my troops in a defensive formation and ordered them to stand down and let me do the work. I want to train my skill in athletics. I rode as close as I could get to these looters, gave the Decimator a test, and then I dismounted. One javelin met a looter's face, the other pierced the torso, and then I switched to Mutilator and tried carving as many looters as I could. But as I struck one of them down, 2 more would close in, and eventually I got overwhelmed and got knocked out. I wasn't in any real danger because their dull blades could never pierce my armor, and as soon as I fell, my warriors charged and wiped them out. I was a bit bruised from this encounter, mostly my ego, but the training was worth it. It didn't take us long to reach Onira, where I met the medic, hired him into my corp, bought him some decent armor, and then appointed him the surgeon of my party. And then we went back to Phycaon, where I realized I'd recover faster if I rested in town. And since resting replenishes your crafting stamina, I also went to the forge, where I used whatever wood I still had to smelt a lot of the weapons I purchased in the desert. Some of those throwing daggers proved to be a very good source of iron, so that was a good investment. When I was done smithing, I left town and immediately ran across another nobleman, Oros, the leader of a large clan that I never knew I wanted into Halcorp. So of course he was made the same offer as all the others, but since he had no fiefs of his own, I had to give him one of the desert castles I bought from the other lords. His clan has 5 generals, which can add a lot of military power to our trade empire. But I was still searching for Mesui, who was spotted in a village not far from here, so my pursuit continued. Just outside Argoron, I saw 2 parties of the Kuzeet, one led by the matriarch of the Khergit, and the other led by Desporion, an ex-imperial. Since this guy was closer, he was invited first and he accepted, and then I could talk to Mesui, whom I've been chasing since the beginning of this chapter. You know the drill. First, I bought all of her fiefs, for which she asked 3.6 million dinars, so like a true simp, I gave her 4. The extra relation we're building from this generous donation is a great stepping stone to getting her large clan into my corporation. Because of a surge of autism, my opening statement was, "You are known as a man of honor," and surprisingly, she took it as a compliment and did not need much convincing after that. Her desire for a just and righteous ruler solidified her decision to join me, and she did manage to put the good of the realm before her own self-interest. And with the Khergit now successfully integrated into Halcorp, I've built a military that can rival any other kingdom. All that was needed from now on was to set a territorial foundation from which Halcorp can expand, a base of sorts. And because there's no place like home, I wanted to have a chat with a few Battanian lords and simply purchase their homeland for myself. After all, it is my homeland too. I guess you could say I'm a bit of a homelander. Anyway, totally unrelated to that subject is the fact that all the persuasion I've done for this past month significantly developed my charm. And traveling with lots of food increased my stewardship to 225, so I picked some suitable perks in both of these skills and continued our journey. Unfortunately for these looters, my journey led me to them. And you know how I feel about looters. I feel they're great, punching bags, so once again, I ordered my troops to stand down and charged them myself. This time, to avoid a concussion, I played it smarter. I stayed near my horse, and when I got overwhelmed, I simply mounted up and rode off to get some distance. I also dropped my polearm because it was quite heavy and was slowing me down when I was running. And to my surprise, this training session went without a hitch. I killed 15 looters, my men put down the rest, and I had a nice jog which increased my cardio by 1 level. Now, on to the next thing on my checklist. Meet Melodier. He was last spotted near Epicrotea. Must be because he's sieging the city. I could wait here a while and make a sale to improve my trade skill, but I'm a bit short on time, so let us have a talk with Melodier and buy just the Battanian castles of Abcomer and Flintog. Everything else is too far from my territory and therefore not worth the hassle. A bit over 1 million dinars is what I paid, and I consider that to be a worthy investment. Now, on to the next target, Seonon. Let's return to the capital and fill its garrison with appropriate troops. Then I was going to leave some of my cavalry in Remtoil, but along the way I got another idea. The first step of this idea was to summon my generals into the army I was leading. One of them was already with me, my own wife, so I talked to her, inspected her troops, took her semi-competent soldiers into my own party, dismissed her from the army, and disbanded her warband. But that last part was a mistake because she took all her men and dumped them all in the garrison of Remtoil, which was already getting crowded, so I had to head back there and remove the unworthy myself. Then she was taken into my party, and I would do my best to keep her safe. I don't want her meeting the same fate as Morenon the Surgeon. Now I want to do the same with my own brother and Yakim the Swift. Take their good soldiers, disband their parties, and take them with me. In the process of doing that, I found myself back to micromanaging every little aspect of my kingdom. There's not much I can say about that. I dropped the good soldiers wherever I still had space, and then I decided to make more space. As governor, my brother would increase the garrison capacity of my capital by an additional 30, so let's leave him here. Only old age can kill him behind these walls, because as long as the capital is protected by 650 elite soldiers, no enemy can take it. I mean, nothing is impossible, but I've never seen an army of 3,000 men, which is the minimum required to take this city. I've done something similar in Remtoil. I appointed Darim the Wastrel as governor of this castle, and he too would offer some slight bonuses. After we were done with all this micromanagement, I met Prindor and bought his castles, Veron and Lanok Hen, which are well within my territory and for which I paid 1.14 million. I also tried recruiting his clan, but because I've tried it not too long ago, he does not want to hear about the subject, so I let him go. Now, for the next big step, I had to meet Caladog, who wasn't too far off. Because I am free to trade settlements, I could strike an advantageous deal with a king. The cities of Razich, Argoron, Sironea and Baltakand, as well as Gao's castle, were given to him, and in return, I asked for something similar. All the remaining Battanian fiefs, which amounted to 4 cities and another castle. But because his fiefs are more valuable than mine, I also had to cough up a bit of money, and when I say a bit, I mean most of what I still had, 1.75 million dinars. In one fell swoop, I completed a project that was years in the making, but all the pieces had to be carefully moved into place before I could execute this plan. Piece number 1, my trade skill. Had I not invested this much time into trading, I would have never been able to make the argument that fiefs are risky assets to possess. As for all the things I had to do to become an experienced merchant, they taught me even more. Destabilization, desertion, starvation, and a whole host of unpleasant situations. When you live through all that and learn to profit from it, you can easily convince a lord that the city can bankrupt him, and it can still be lost at a moment's notice. Better to have cold, hard gold in your hand, and then you're free to use this gold to take your city back from the merchant if you so desire. But this merchant planned for that contingency, which leads me to piece number 2, the soldiers. Fians, Oathsworns, mercenaries, and a huge cavalry retinue were all prepared so that in the event we're forced into a full-scale war, we can win with minimal casualties. But even with this many elite soldiers and 3 other generals leading them, I need the third piece. The corporation, because I cannot do everything by myself. Sure, I could go on a warpath and conquer city after city, no problem, but what happens when the enemy circumvents my army and lays siege to my capital or sets my lands on fire? I cannot be everywhere at once, and so I need to recruit other clans to expand my influence and make me a target that people would think twice before attacking. The third piece, in turn, allows me to move the fourth one. The other clans who can defend my land when I'm off to war, or better yet, who can conquer land in my name, while I babysit our territories. You saw what happened when I bit off more than I could chew, and I had more land than I could manage. All the kingdoms declared war on me, wanting to take a piece of the pie. It was a small and pathetic pie at the time, and they all thought they could take it, so I had to pay them off. Had I bought all of Battania before all these pieces were in place, it would not have taken long for a red, or teal, or yellow flag to dominate the landscape. But with all these clans by my side, good luck declaring war and surviving the attempt. Now I held all the cards, but some of these cards are not worth holding on to, so I had to form an army and use it as a small council meeting with the other big lords in our kingdom. Chason, Mesui, Adram, and Oros, the leaders of the biggest clans, were all summoned into the army so I could easily divide our territory in an efficient and fair manner. but they were all patrolling their territory, which is very far from here, so it would take several days for all of them to arrive, and in the meantime, I had to do more micromanagement, my favorite. I could simply wait in a city and go to the forge, but I had a better idea. Since I'll be giving all these fiefs away, why not pick up the best soldiers and add them to my personal retinues? The first thing I've done was get all my cavalry from Remtoil Castle to move faster. I also added a few miscellaneous troops into the mix, but I kept my party somewhat empty to have room for all our new soldiers. Now, if I were to tell you about each little detail of this micromanagement, we'd be here for hours, so to keep things short, I got a lot of soldiers from these garrisons. Lots of cavalry, plenty of Oathsworns, and several Fians. I don't know the exact number, but I took soldiers until my party was full, after which they were transported into the garrisons of my 3 personal fiefs. And when those garrisons were filled to capacity, I went to Karban Seth and filled my party yet again. Once we were done with all this micromanagement, I decided to rest and craft until my vassals arrived in the army. Not long after we went to the inn, my wife gave me good news once more. Let's hope this is not another misfortune. As we were waiting, my vassals started pouring in. But before I went to the council meeting, I decided to craft a few javelins for the private collector. I would like to give a few of these to my vassals because they make even more profit on them than I do, and honestly, I don't mind having rich lords leading my armies. When we were done forging, I went to the Lord's Hall and held the small council meeting. The first lord I talked to was Chason Neretzes. His clan is the closest to my family, and as such, he will receive preferential treatment even though House Neretzes is not the strongest clan around. He already owns Pendrake Castle, so naturally, I also sold him the city we're in. Since his fiefs are close together, his clan members won't have to travel across the map to patrol their lands. He paid me 1.5 million for the city, which is pretty good since my finances are low. Now he was the one saving me from bankruptcy. Next I spoke to Adram, the patriarch of the Saranid clan, and in exchange for his desert castle, he was given the city of Lageta, which isn't in Battania but still pretty close. But the city is struggling and its value is nowhere near that pitiful castle from the south. So I also had to throw in a few of the javelins I just crafted, plus another 75k. Not my most profitable exchange, but still good, since the south of Battania was now in good hands. Third was Oros, who was going to be offered Dunglanes, since his clan is quite large, but he couldn't pay up. I could let Dunglanes go for all he ever owned, and I'd probably still be good, but my lord would go bankrupt and I can't have poor people leading my armies. He will be made rich with the javelins I sold him, and to keep him a landowner, I sold Veron Castle to him. We left the best for last, Mesui, matriarch of the Khergit clan. Her heart is glad to see me, because she knows she's about to get a good deal. Her piece of shit castle, placed at the eastern border of the empire, as well as 1.15 million, were exchanged for Dunglanes, a very prosperous town and the beating heart of Battania. With a Khergit based in this town, her hordes can patrol all of our territory. But I still had a city and a few castles to give and no one to sell to. So I also summoned Aaron into the council, and when he arrived, he was made an offer he couldn't refuse because it was too good. The rich city of Pencanok, which he previously owned, in exchange for Druimore Castle and 1.5 million. I've heard some monarchs voice complaints that they cannot bestow their own territory upon the vassals. Clearly, none of them thought of approaching kingdom management as another business venture. Let me tell you, being a corporate overlord opens a world of possibilities that a king's mind can't even fathom. But I still have several castles to give and several vassals to summon into another council meeting. But since I spent my hard-earned influence on this army, I want to get my money's worth from it, so I'll keep going until our cohesion depletes. This is the best way to develop my leadership skill, which is really close to 125, and when that threshold is passed, I can become a disciplinarian who can turn forest bandits into Battanian Fians, or mountain bandits into Vlandian champions, and so on. Even looters become useful to recruit at this point, because with a bit of training and discipline, they can be trained into Imperial Legionaries. You know, some of them, maybe 10%, the rest would just become fertilizer, which is still a better fate than being a looter. But I digress. After our first council meeting, I wanted to expand our territory a little, through non-violent means if possible. There's 3 castles nearby that are still within my territory: Kaleus, Neviansk and Ormanfard, all owned by the Vlandians. So I sought out the owners of these fiefs to buy them for myself. and subsequently sell to my vassals. The first Vlandian I met was Servic, Lord of Kaleus Castle, and a Rovalt. What if I took both? It would set me back 2.6 million, but it's a worthy investment, so we made a deal. I did not bother recruiting Servic into Halcorp. In fact, I'll avoid that for a while. For now, I have more vassals than territory, so let us expand first. Now, Rovalt is a town I intend to keep for myself, so I organized some projects, but I didn't bother investing any money into it. Eventually I would optimize its garrison for maximum profit, but we won't bother with that right now. As I was chasing after another of these Vlandian lords, and just before my army cohesion depleted, I reached level 125 in leadership, and I became a disciplinarian. Fians are too precious to risk in battle? Not anymore. Just run some forest bandits down, and when they beg for their lives, you'll be able to easily recruit them into your army and have them replace your Fians. This perk is a tiny yet important piece of the puzzle, by the way. Oh yeah, it's all coming together. As soon as the army was disbanded, it was time to form another one with the vassals who still hold territory in the south: Tynops, Fafen, and Desporion. Again, it would take them a few days to get here, but I'm running errands anyway, so they'll eventually catch up. It took me a while to find a Carant, and I would have had to wait for him to finish raiding this village, were it not for the brave intervention of Akrum, who chased him off. Even so, him and his soldiers were grinning from ear to ear, so I'm glad to have found him in such a good mood. Now, to buy his castle. Only 140k? This is the cheapest fief I've ever bought. After this, I also tried to recruit him, but he was having none of it, so I left him alone. Well, he wasn't alone. Akrum's army kept him good company. They even took him along on a ride. How nice of them. At this point, I only had one castle left to buy before Halcorp is completely established. But in my path, a distraction. 123 looters, my oh my, what a bloodbath awaits us. I treated this like another one of my training sessions, but I got in way over my head and got knocked out. I could have easily died to this many looters, but they were too busy fighting for survival to do anything else to me. But if that were to happen, it would have been shameful. After so much planning, so much maneuvering, only to die to an unwashed mass of ruffians. I would have to be more careful in the future. My soldiers swiftly dealt with them, and with another group of 59 that wasn't too far off, earning me a decent amount of renown and influence, the only resources I don't have enough of. As I was searching for Incurian, whose castle I wanted to add to the collection, my other vassals arrived in my army, so I did pretty much the same thing I've done in the first council meeting, albeit to a smaller scale. All these guys gave me their current fiefs, which are too far from Botania, and then the territory was divided as follows. Tynops was given Kaleus Castle, Fafen was given dominion over Neviansk, and Desporion was given the fiefs of Druimor and Aster Castle. But soon I would need to adjust the distribution of these lands, because of some of the maneuvers I would make. You see, shortly after we held this council meeting, I met Melodier once more, and this time, he was Lord of Epicrotea. Well, he deserves it, since he was the one who took it from the Vlandians, but I deserve it more because I have the money to buy it, as well as the rest of his castles, Rizos and Mekalovea, which are close to Epic Town, as well as Talivel, which is a bit south under Penkanok. I only paid 1.6 million and all of my crafted javelins. I also asked Melodier to join us, but he said no, so I didn't press him any further. With the Aserai fiefs in my possession, it was time to seek out Caladog and get rid of them. They're a liability. In my path, I run across the leaders of two mercenary companies who were promptly hired into Halcorp. One of those was Brand of the Brotherhood, whom I defeated in battle and promptly released, not too long ago. Now, mercs are unreliable and they'll probably leave as soon as it's convenient for them, but honestly, they only get paid for their work, so I don't mind. The Embers of the Flame left long ago and they've since been forgotten. Soon after that, I met my boy, Caladog, and it was time to get rid of the castles that I didn't need. With the exception of Rizos, all the others were too far away to properly be defended, and I would have lost them at the first war deck, so I had to dispose of them. I'd much rather have 2.6 million in the bank. Thanks, dog. Now this territory is Botania's problem, which, by the way, is starting to stretch thin. Do they even qualify as Botania anymore? I mean, I own that country now, and their kingdom only holds imperial towns. Actually, I don't care. They too will be absorbed into Halcorp, so the subject is irrelevant. With more territory under our control, it's time to reorganize things a little. In the previous council meeting, I was disappointed because I couldn't give Oros a town. He was too poor and couldn't afford it. But now, he might just have enough cash to buy Epicrotea. He still doesn't. so I spent some time at the forge and sold him a few javelins. The next time we talk, he better have the money for a town. It's an injustice for such a large clan to be so poor. Now, because I recently made deals with my other vassals, I needed to wait for some time before I could barter with them again. So you know what I've done while waiting. Crafted weapons. But materials were running low, so I had to go to Seonon, and there I purchased 600 units of wood. That should last us a while. I also took a look at my workshops and their shed. Especially the tanner. Jesus, it's making no money. Let's change it into a carpenter instead. The carpenter is somewhat competing with the ironmonger for wood, but at least now we're producing bows and shields. Then the next few days would be spent at the forge, so you know, la-di-da. I also gained another level, whoop-de-doo. So I kept crafting until my army's cohesion reached critical levels, at which point I went to the Lord's Hall into another council meeting. Oros now had enough money, finally. I asked for all of it and Veron Castle, and in exchange, I gave him Epic Rotea and some javelins. In hindsight, I should have replaced the javelins with Mekalovea Castle, but I'll do this next time we meet. Tynops was relieved of Kaleus Castle, and his clan was given dominion over Talivel and Veron castles, which are close to one another. I have a feeling I got less than these castles were worth, but I took all his money, so I'm not the one who should complain. I should have gifted him a javelin to help with his finances, but again, that is the gift of hindsight. As for Fafen, he was appointed ruler of Kaleus Castle as well, and now he too had two fiefs close to each other, but just like Tynops, he went broke after dealing with me. When I'm able to, I will recall these boys to me and just gift them some javelins. It hurts seeing them poor, and it also reflects badly on me and the corporation. In the end, I also remembered to purchase Ormanfard Castle, which would be sold to Mesui, along with a lot of my javelins for 2.5 million dinars. Aaron was also recalled into my army, and I gave him dominion over Abcomer Castle, which sits right outside his town, and he also bought a huge amount of javelins for 1.8 million. Finally, I've also done something similar with Lucian, selling him a castle near Marunath for 800k, and with this final move, Halcorp is complete. Its mission isn't. Buying Botania and dividing it among my vassals was only the first step. We don't yet dominate the world, and it will take us a while to get there, but this is a victory on its own. We still have territory to purchase, wars to wage, and deals to make. But now that Halcorp can compete with the major kingdoms, the continent is finally within my grasp. All I have to do from now on is reach out. But I don't know if I'll be able to do it like this anymore. The stories are long and time is running short, so I may have to sacrifice some quality if I'm to finish these corporate reports before I move on to a different workplace. But we're still in Calradia for now, and we gotta make use of the time we have. The last bit of good news came when my first son was born. Now, to clarify things, he is not my firstborn. That would be Meredith. But she is not my son. She's my daughter. Small, yet important distinction. My wife named him Egan, but I want to give him a conqueror's name. William. It's also a butcher's name. Before we say our farewells, let's take a look at all we've accomplished today. We claimed Botania for the Halcyon Corporation, we added a total of 9 different clans into our ranks, including House Neretzes, the Saranid Sultanate, and the Khergit Khanate, and we're back to a healthy balance of 11 million dinars. Other minor accomplishments include the influence I've gained, the policies we enacted, and the fact that I've rebuilt my cavalry after it was decimated years ago by Tynops when he was fighting for the Empire. Now, I'm proud to have such a skilled military commander under my corporate banner. People like him will help me accomplish my ultimate goal, but that comes in the future. For now, we're done. That's all I had to say for today. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye now.